Welcome back to the most professional StarCraft 2 with the former world champion Zerg in the blue, the Italian stallion. It's Reynor. Facing off and standing in his way, the Protoss in the red, demour the wall. It's showtime. In a best of 5 Protoss versus Zerg tournament showdown between one of the most aggressive and the most defensive players in the game. So before we get started, it'd be incredible if you could smash that like button and maybe even subscribe. Help me count of the algorithm. And Jimmy, what do we have? 1,747 likes on this video, on this cast, and I'll cast another one. And I'll probably do it anyways, because I don't know what else I do with my life. But thank you for watching. Hopefully you've had a good day so far, and hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better. As the first adept comes in, throwing shade, and Showtime's already been able to deny the Natchery and force Reynor into the third, but as one of the most flexible Zerg players, I assume in the game as well, the third base is a liability, all right? You have to weigh the dangers of taking the third base early on against the potential economic benefit, the opportunity cost. Now, if you try to take your hatchery before the first probe comes across the map, then you have to cut into your drone count. Just like the adepts when they casually shade through and get 3 kills and counting. More Zerglings, a lot of mining time lost as well. Gonna try to snipe one more drone. Well, kind of an example of the potential liabilities of taking that third base. As being that far away from one of your hatcheries, the queens not as spry as they used to be. The Zerglings can't be everywhere at once, especially before speed completes. And forcing the Zerg into the third gives you that opportunity to dart in with the adepts and potentially get some early kills. And the threat being there at all is part of why Protoss make that a priority. Now, Reynor, actually a few workers behind. Not too surprising considering everything so far, but he's building up the queen count. He's got the Zerglings. Showtime has an oracle, an adept, and that's more than enough to keep that third base alive, despite how early it is. Now oracle's coming across. I don't think he used the energy recharge. The drones will retreat a little further back, so the queens might have a better opportunity to drive things away. Will he actually light up the oracle here? I doubt it. But 3 adepts, more than a. He's got enough adepts. All right, Jimmy, edit that out. I swear I can speak English really good. Oracle's darting in. And taking a casual stroll through the base. And it's just adept glaives. He's just gonna go adept glaives. As he flies over the crashed mothership. Maybe a bit of foreshadowing. Or potentially a warning, either way. Whatever sounds most dramatic. Adept's able to take out the creep tumor. Shades away. So far, not too much. Well, well, we see a Roach Warren. Oh, well, the Roach Warren's already done. So Reynor has the tools he needs to potentially deal with this. There's not so many adepts so far that it's clearly a glaives all-in. This is still enough that you could just be throwing it out there. But I think Reynor getting very suspicious as he continues to dart around with the Zerglings. And that sells him on the idea. The roaches are already popping out. 54 drones is by no means a booming economy for the Zerg. But you're never going to get a booming economy if you lose all your drones to adepts. And more economic advice you get after liking and subscribing. But a whole gang of adepts shading across the map. And the 50 Shades with Glaives build is a classic tactic, especially to open things up. Keep the Zerg honest. Now, the major downsides are the expiration date on adepts. They're just not as good as stalkers at kiting across the field, and they're not nearly as cost-effective as charge lots at continually putting on pressure. So the adepts have to get damage done before there's a critical mass of roaches, lings, and banes, because they do not scale nearly as well with quantity, and their quality over time significantly decreases. But even now, he has enough, and Showtime with a very careful and controlled style. You don't get nicknamed the Wall because of your reckless aggression, believe it or not. But that doesn't mean he's passive. It just means he knows how to play defense, and sometimes the best defense is a good offense. The Oracle's right at the edge of the creep. Reynor up to 70 drones now. kind of given up on the any potential opportunity for counter-aggression, mostly because Showtime hasn't really lost anything. He's lost 2 adepts, but coming across the map with the oracles watching overhead and apparently taking a tactical pause lag break as well. And Bomber actually observing for this Kung Fu Cup. Wow. Wow. Remember when Scarlet beat Bomber with Baneling Mines? Like 12 years ago? Oh my. Over half of Reynor's life and other like and subscribe for Existential Dread. Colossus with extended thermal lance on the way. A strong start and an interesting proposition. We've seen Hero trying this style, which is not... Well, I feel whenever Hero has any success, every Protoss is obligated to try it. And over half the time, they're like, exactly what was he thinking? And I'm not sure Hero took less than a game, but that's not surprising. I'm not sure Hero has an answer to that question either, but... Colossi, so Storm has been arguably nerfed. The fact that Storm doesn't do as much DPS, despite having a larger radius and longer duration, makes it significantly less effective against sharp Hydra Ling Bane timings. And right here, with this many Zerglings on the field, some charge lots coming in, the Adepts eventually cleared up. Showtime was just itching for an opportunity to get rid of them, it seems. He's at 140 supply, trying to zone out the army. The Immortal's in a precarious position. The Zergling's getting a wrap around. Colossus on the field triggers the barrier on one of the Immortals. But so far with the Colossus, cannons coming online. That 4th base is a liability right now for Showtime. But I think he has the numbers to defend it. And right now, Reynor is building 19 Banelings. He's got Baneling speed on the way, which adds the +5 HP as well. But he does not have an infestation pit, a spire, nor a hive. Well, one of those is required for the other, but the infestation pit starts. Reynor's at 86 drones, 200 supply. There's no reason to wait any longer. He's gonna go. The 4th base is nearly completed, which means he can't cancel it any longer. The Colossi, extended thermal lance is completed, reaching out into the Banelings. The Zealots trying to retreat backwards, force field zoning out, forces them to come around the corner on the Archons, and Showtime with a very well-placed set of force fields. The Colossi staying intact, now able to get some lances into the Hydralis. And it seems far too hot to handle right now. Showtime dismantling that attack like a battlefield surgeon, and manages to cauterize the pieces he needed to and drive back the rest. The results so far, Reynor lost a dozen Hydras, 125 Zerglings. So far, Showtime hasn't lost a single one of his robo units, a couple Archons, but they were caught in the front of everything. And Reynor still has... Now, Reynor still has the economy. Okay, he's got 85 drones, 5 bases. He's knocking on the door, and there's not much to answer. The Immortals. Lurker Den's on the way alongside the Hive, so there's a timer on these sort of compositions, one way or another. The Probes on the run, and the Stasis! What a save! He's able to drive things back on the left side, but the base itself recalls forward, maybe at the last possible second. The army's here, and... oh, those Banelings are about to pop out, and I think... well, the Zerglings will get it. And then the Banelings. He gets the Zealots out of the way, doesn't give them a target. And Showtime diffuses the situation about as well as he could. But Reynor got damage. And behind it, it's not like he cut off his tech progression. He already has a Lurker Den completed. Range is on the way. Roach speed's being added in, which is, you know, he didn't actually have Roach speed before, which may have contributed to the ineffectiveness of some of these attacks, but Lurkers are in production. But Showtime has slowly ground forward in supply. He's at 180 against 194, and with only 69 probes, which is still a nice enough economy, he has an army to compete on the field in potentially multiple locations, because Reynor has a dozen more workers, putting his army supply a little bit lower. And, of course, the army supply includes queens. which have a tendency to be more homebodies than anything. At least nowadays. All right, showtime. Finally heading towards bringing a probe for a proxy as well. Could potentially warp in proxy gates with the warp prism. But we've got some zealots over to the left. The baneling's going to deal with it. Showtime pulls back. So far, Reynor holding. And we'll get the wrap around and knock out the zealots. Still moving forward. Showtime knows there's a limited time that he can show this army on the field without it being a lot of liability. He can't go back for too long, otherwise the lurkers and the vipers will have the initiative. And those are not units you want to get in a position where they can actually hit your bases. But here comes Reynor. He's got a surround potentially set up on the map. That's a lot of Archons, but we'll see who's flanking who at the end of the day. The Lings and Banes deciding that this is something they don't want to have a piece of right now, though they may not get a choice in the end. 11 Archons with overwhelming power surrounding those Colossi, which 31 kills, 17. He's managed to keep them alive for so long. So many Protoss just throw him into the fray, but Showtime has a tendency to be very particular about things. The Lings and Banes crashing through. Reynor, he's got a Spire in production as well. Unwilling to commit the army on the field. Loses the Nexus, unfortunate. And Showtime doesn't really have the money to burn on throwing Nexi away. A Fleet Beacon is in production. Blink and Storm, as well as +3 weapons and +1 shields. Quite a late-game charcuterie board of all the good upgrades that Protoss probably want at some point, especially as we get towards 200 supply. Meanwhile, Nidus network for Reynor. He's focused on just building up this and now making his Spire great again. Getting the late-game composition and not throwing away his ground army. A surprising reserve here from Reynor, but not necessarily a bad idea with this many Archons just commanding the field. Broodlords are very clearly the best and possibly only counter to that many Archons. Even Lurkers, except in obscenely high numbers, are going to struggle, as Archons get a bonus to biological, which includes not only Zerg units, but also buildings. This Zealot, very brave. All 15 Lurkers off to the right side, which is maybe slightly out of position. As the Archons are punching forward, the Lurkers are scrambling up. No second Stargate was produced for Showtime. I think he wants to build a Mothership, but he's actually suffering from success. He doesn't have the open supply to do so. And a Nidus at the back. Showtime not reacting. Oh, no. Oh no. It's a disaster. The Lurkers are going to come through, and this is the kind of thing that can undo a Protoss so quickly. The Banelings are rolling into the 4th base at the 3 o'clock. Storms are going to try to stall things out. 22 probes dead, most of them at the natural. Going to warp in an optimistic set of Zealots. Not going to be enough, and the Banelings just keep going, and they keep rolling. And they see me hating. A Mothership has begun, as certainly there's enough supply freed up now, and Showtime has decided that there's not much to go back to, so it might as well go forward. Unfortunately, Reynor with the Nidus is just pulling the Protoss apart at the seams here. And Showtime has the supply for now, but his worker count has plummeted. He's lost the natural. The 4th base is cleaned up. He might lose the robotics facility, the cyber core potentially next, and Showtime's in the center of the map going back and forth. He's running out of real estate, quite literally, in his main base, as the Lurkers have already shredded the natural. The Storms are zoning everything out. He has the platonic ideal of Protoss here. But where's that recall? He recalls to the northern base. The patience is excruciating out of Showtime. For better or worse, there's a Mothership 80% of the way done. It should be able to complete. Well, the Lurkers are doing a lot of damage to the Nexus. The Fleet Beacon might be killed as well. But this is the Mothership! And the Fleet Beacon survives. And Showtime, with an almost... Don't be hasty. Showtime just keeps going back, and he has the army. He has that idealized Protoss army. He doesn't have as many Tempests as you'd like. And by that, I mean the idealized Protoss army is apparently 14 Archons and also some other stuff. As the Archons, one by one, squeezing their way through what's left of the wall, which is barely protecting anything, a remnant of what once was. No tectonic destable. Oh, losing several Templar. Another significant nerf to Storm was the cast range. It has one less cast range now, meaning it's a lot harder to get in range of those lurkers on your own. But just crushing through the lurkers over to the right side, but there's plenty more on the left. And recall is still over 30 seconds away. Another attack, the Lings pulling him apart. The pylon actually hard-walled off Dimawa's Dimawa. An Ultraless Cavern is on the way, and remember that Greater Spire is already completed. As Reynor is hitting Showtime in 1, 2, 3 bases simultaneously. Showtime gonna go all out on the other side. There's barely any home to go back to at this point. He's down to 17 probes, but he's got a massive army right now. 134 army supply. And Reynor is building all these upgrades, all this tech, but is his standing army good enough? How much detection is there? There is a single Oracle, 3 observers. I assume a couple are with this army here. Yanks in the only Tempest and knocks it down. The Vipers, also quite a threat. The main base, a single lurker there. Meanwhile, Showtime's starting to run low on bases themselves. And the buildings are being ripped apart. They're breaking into the buildings. The Zerglings have taken down the forges, the fleet beacon, the rest of the tech of the main. But Showtime's going to try his hand at the same. And we'll have to see whether any army's attack is going to be in vain. And who's going to be suffering significantly more pain. As right now, both sides trying to stay in their lane. And I'm starting to feel like I'm barely even sane. There's not really enough economy for them to maintain. And at this point, are they even capable of winning the game? What? Is this obviously it's a base trade, but this is a base obliteration. There's 12 probes. There's ultras walled in. Let me at them. This is happening. The ultras trying to escape. There will be no more. The last of their kind, and the first of their kind. Oh my god. Oh, sweet Tassadar. Showtime, in all the chaos and all the fire and fury, did not save 800 minerals. Sorry, 400. I don't know why I said 800. Thus, Showtime has not rebuilt his base and is being revealed. He didn't realize, or he had no opportunity, but he almost has enough minerals in his probes' mouths, or whatever their analog is. Protoss has never been big on that idea. Now, Reynor doesn't know. He knows probably that Showtime doesn't have many more minerals. This doesn't mean he doesn't have the minerals to build another base, okay? So Reynor can't know that. But he does know that clearly Showtime has so little probes or minerals left, he doesn't want to risk it to the last second. What he's trying to do now is bait Reynor into moving out with enough of his army so he can move in. There's still detection. Reynor has everything here. He's rebuilt his lair, his spore crawler moving forward. It's 15 lurkers, 3 ultras. This is quite a prickly location. But Showtime going forward. He's just gonna go for it. Great feedbacks on the Vipers, but there's some blinding clouds underneath. The Ultralists, the lurkers, it's almost impossible to tell what's going on. 96 to 80 supply, he's going forward. There's nothing to go back to. Time warp. The damage. Where's the observer? That last observer in the corner. If he needs to keep it alive. The mothership overhead. There's not that many lurkers left. We're down under 50 supply. Try to take down the mothership. 2 observers. Does he have a robo? He could repower the wait. No. He lost his... No! Oh, the probes! Wait, he has a warp prism. He has a warp... Okay, so... There's one drone against 0 probes. The Mothership! Oh no, he's juggling. And that last observer, but Reynor is mining with 1 drone, and he's quadrupling his drone count right now. Oh my. So Showtime, this is a game of imperfect information. And Showtime is warping in 3 zealots. There's really not that many lurkers. Somehow the Colossi, 69 kills, 50 kills, not for much longer, but the Colossi have survived. I don't think these are the originals, but they've done so much. An observer at the back, microing forward, zealots from the other side. Here we go. Corruptor's over the top. He's gonna go for the observer. He gets the observer. He's trying to go forward. There's no more detection. He gets the base. The last up. But Reynor has another hatchery. And they were all of them deceived. For another hatch was made. 3 lurkers. 1 corruptor. There's 4 lurkers. Okay, left one over here. Somehow there's a creep tumor? What? There's no detection. GG. That felt like the right way to say it. All right. With 12 supply, there were 2 mutas in production. Oh no. Reynor threw so much at Showtime so quickly, and he almost held it together. But it was just slightly too much. Showtime lost track of his minerals. He lost track. I feel like if he had perfect information, which you can't have, but if he had perfect information, he could have won that. He had the army to beat the lurkers, but Reynor was kind of obfuscating exactly where he was, and he ended up... He pulled the drones in that last fight, I think. Wow. One of the closest games, which... Just the constant poking and prodding of Reynor eventually instigating Showtime to come across the map and get within a few supply and 1 observer of victory. But instead, one of the most comprehensive and crushing defeats. Oh, that hurts. And Showtime's patience, absolutely legendary. Like, he waited so long. It felt like a mistake. And it only barely was by the end. Well, Reynor takes game number 1. Not for lack of Showtime strength. There was a non-zero chance. Like, if Reynor doesn't have another hatch there, we go to a draw. Very potentially. If Reynor did not have that hatch in the bottom right corner, we could be looking at Tourmaline again. Wild. Oh, thank you, Showtime, for using the indicator that actually shows you where to put the pylon. Unlike some Protoss I know. And we never saw the Broodlords, either. Feel like, at some point, if it just keeps going, then eventually Reynor gets there. But he's not that type of player. He does not want to sit back and total the 30 Broodlords to deal with the army. Showtime will deal with it. But, clearly, he'd rather throw the game into total, utter chaos than turtle it up. And, you know, we love him for it. But it certainly turned what seemed to be a pretty solid advantage into almost a coin flip. Not that luck really played into it at all, but... The fact is that Showtime lost so much of his infrastructure so quickly, he didn't have the time to think about keeping 400 minerals. Which... And if he had... That game could, like, that's a game that could have reset entirely, too. Like, we both go back to 1 base and start from the Stone Age with the relics of the past. Couple Colossi with 100 kills, like... some lurkers with dozens, and then start the tech tree from the bottom. Wild. Showtime, once again reprising his role as one of the most entertaining, and I say this with love and respect, losers in the game. He has been part, usually on the losing end, of some of the most dramatic games in StarCraft history because of that patience. That almost laissez-faire, but clearly not, defensive style. Now what does he have for us? Reynor kind of freewheeling the Ling Roach Hydra into the Mass Lurker Corruptor with some Ultras mixed in there, but they really never got their time to shine. In fact, they barely got out of the eggs before they were struggling. That was a bit tough. I'm going to be recovering from that one for the entire series, unless these games... There's a non-zero chance that the next 2 to 4 games are of similar stress and intensity. Oh, what are those? We got little tablets there, some little plot devices, which is most of the StarCraft 2 campaign as well. I'm not talking about Day 9 and Tasteless. It's been a while. I think I've only seen like 1 or 2 draws in Protoss versus Zerg. Most draw situations, and there's been like low double digits in any high-level matches in StarCraft 2. Mostly involve the fact that Terran buildings can fly into the corner. And at some point, you just don't have the anti-air, and they don't have a ground army. And that's where we're left. It's been a while since even one of those. But, I want to say it was Squirtle versus He Who Shall Not Be Named. It was one of the most ridiculous back in the day. Comes down to like a spore crawler living against phoenixes or something. Like, not the queens. And now the Shady Bunch is headed out. The adepts, that's pretty, yeah, he goes for it. Jams them in. And, oh, 2 drones. And the adepts will mostly get away. And he actually,
Susan, are they allowed to do that? But what are we gonna do about it? They can just teleport all over the place. How is that fair? It's not about what's fair, Brenda. It's about what they can do.
I don't...
That feels like you were gonna be a lot more dramatic and then kind of tapered off there at the end. You do have a point. And
sorry, Jimmy, edit that out. 8 drones killed with the various pokes and prods of the adepts and oracles. Ends up losing the adepts, but got a lot of zerglings alongside him. A strong start. Showtime with more workers going straight into the Templar archives. Blink and +1. Hydra is dead on the other side for Reynor. The usual opposite, but the fact that the Templar archives will be finishing at a similar timing means Storm should be completed by the time a critical mass of Hydras can be gathered. Thank you. Reynor reaches out and grabs the gold base in the bottom left corner. It isn't quite a symmetrical map. The top right is just a normal blue base, so if Reynor can get away with it, that's quite an economic lead. Somehow threads the needle of stasis wards and still has a couple of them back there. Not sure if he realizes it or not, but driving forward, Showtime actually oh, that's not great. That is a lot of the Zerglings. A critical mass here. There are Hydras on the way. Not too many stars, but another Stasis catches some of the Hydras as well. And the Oracles might be able to light up, just investing entirely in the Stasis wards. The first one's about to run out. But he might actually be able to take out the base. Well, just gonna leave it there. Another Stasis almost acts as a force field to keep everything out. And so far, Showtime with a meticulous dismantling of the counter pressure. Wow, look at this. The mini-map looks crazy. Showtime been working on his Factorio builds. It's been a little while. I played when Space Age came out, but the whole ship system kind of lost me after a while. Too simple for it. Also, it wasn't very satisfying. Like, why can't I use most of my tech on the spaceships? Why does that have to be the most complicated? It feels like that should be the easiest part. Anyways, there's probably mods for it now. Of course there are. How do you know this game isn't a Factorio mod? Or vice versa? Food for thought. Not for the Protoss, though. Stalkers, Templar, Archons, oh my. But, oh, there's a set of rocks here. I've never seen anyone take these down yet. But opens up a much more direct path. And, wow, this is a direct ramp up. Kind of crazy. Very Brood War-esque kind of layout there. Looks very odd. Alright, need to stop thinking out loud. Well, usually I do. There's a filter somewhere. Hopefully. I assume. 36 Banelings on the way. Quite a multitude, as Baneling speed is 15 seconds out, closing in quickly. And Reynor, near 200 supply. The Storm softening up many of the Hydras. There are 5 High Templar, though I'm not sure. Most of them coming from the 4th base right now. The Cyber Core is torn down. The Banelings are rolling in. The Templar, a little bit late, but the Stasis gonna help zone them out. Just Storms on top of the Archons, as they can weather it a lot easier. Gonna lose a couple Archons to his own Storm, but Reynor splitting off. The use of Stasis is immaculate here to keep control of the fight. Constantly adding Stasis and keeping the Banelings at bay. Though, of course, you have to be a little careful about 20 seconds later when they pop out. Back into the fray. And now the Zerglings. Storms across the board, uses some of the Oracles, lights them up to be part of the fight. The Hydras might be able to take them down, but the Hydra count is thinning out drastically. Still, though, Showtime losing a lot of supply, and Reynor is mining from that bottom left corner base. He's got the gold base, which means he can continue this level of production, but he needs to bring it back together. Showtime able to win the tail end of the fight as the Hydras on their own, the Zerglings trickling in piecemeal, and the Protoss more than capable of slicing them apart. Targeting down the Hydras on the back line. Some more top-tier micro go... Have to be careful. That Archon is so important. The armies are whittled down so dramatically. 10 more Hydras, 18 more Zerglings on the way for Reynor. He's got +1 attack of both flavors, melee and ranged. Did Showtime realize he lost his Cyber Core? I don't think so, not quite yet, but he's half-walled off the 3rd base. He's got the cannons at the 4th. He's got 80 probes against 81 drones. The incomes are almost dead even at this stage. And Reynor does not have a follow-up. He doesn't have a Hive. He doesn't have a Lurker Den. What he does have are Hydraslings and Banes. All right, that's easier. We'll just check off those boxes. Meanwhile, the Archons zoning things out, but still enough Templar to lay down the Storms on the back. Trying to keep the Hydras at bay. The Archons just tanking the Banes and the Storm. Splash damage from either side. But a big Zealot counterattack assassinates a Queen. It might actually be able to take out the hatchery as well. Reynor's going to be drawn all the way back, and this is a big charge lock counter for Showtime. Not only is he slicing through dozens of Zerglings, but he's dragged the entire army off the field. And at this stage of the game, when Reynor was clearly trying to keep him off of the Templar, he was trying to control the amount of Storms. He just lost any semblance of that control. And without it, the game is much more difficult. The Zealot's just targeting the hatch, and this... He went for the map control, and now he goes for the economy. The charge lots on either side. Starting to pull apart at Reynor. And at this stage, Showtime's taking the economic lead. He has better upgrades, arguably with +2 weapons, but he's working on the shields for his Archons. Who goes shields after +2? Apparently Showtime does. D. Mawa, focused on keeping his units alive. Oh, those are changelings. The Hydras, Lings, and Banes. Trundling north. There's not much there to spot for him, but he actually pulls back to deal with the charge lots. Thing is, Reynor still doesn't have the tech. He still doesn't have an infestation pit. It's still Hydraling Bane. Alright, we're going back to that. There are 23 Banes with a dozen more on the way. The Archon's coming down. The probes might have to run. The Zealots holding their ground. Meanwhile, some Zerglings got into the main as the wall off was torn asunder. But between the Archons and the Templar behind, another round of charge lots gonna force the Queens into the corner. Reynor bleeding out drones, and I can't help but feel he's sliding towards disaster. Showtime is effectively maxed out. He has, again, 11 Archons. And plenty of economy to back it up. Working on +3, shield upgrades completed. There's no recalling to a base, that's half done. But he's gonna go for the base trade. And last time it didn't work out quite as well for him, but this time around, he's not dealing with the lurkers. There are no corruptors. This is the army to beat. And I'm not sure Reynor has, even with 250 supply of Hydraling Bane, he'd be hard-pressed to do so. But Showtime backs off, objective accomplished, destroyed another base. And now maintaining a significant economic lead. Reynor rebuilding the bottom left corner. Going to take that mid-ground location. Reynor's just all in on Banelings. 28 more Banes on the way. Honestly, kind of surprised. Well, Showtime staying true to form. Very careful, trying to bait Reynor into a bad fight, and eventually forcing the issue by splitting his forces himself. And the storms covering any sort of retreat. The fadeaway storms, 5 drones. And Showtime never has to fight. He just needs to split off enough units to drag the army out of position. So never fight fair. The storm's coding. He still has half a dozen banked up. Not quite enough to take down the hatchery, but the next wave might be more than. Another charge. Another wave of charge lots is warped in, plus 3 Protoss ground weapons is now completed. The Hydras, Lings, and Banes slowly but very surely being whittled down by Showtime's inexorable style. There's a fleet beacon on the way, a greater spire for Reynor, and there is the increasing chance that Showtime is too patient for his own good. And if there's Brood Lords, oh. Well. Showtime loses almost nothing. Reynor taps out while Showtime's still at 200 supply after a fight. Just on the breaking point, and eventually Showtime just kicks him into the pit. Exactly what he wanted and what he was looking for. Despite a 20 to 40 army supply lead, both the positioning and the building layout for Showtime, enough to keep the Zerg at bay, and then all Reynor could do was tread water until he drowned in the storms. Showtime strikes back, and D. Mawa has been rebuilt. True to form and a consistent style. And Reynor, for a few moments, maybe. But those moments pass pretty quick. And I'll tell you, as a Zerg, and I'm 1/3 Zerg myself, some of my best friends are Zerg, okay? You want to GG after the Hydroling Bane fails. All right, if you are all... They have 4 bases and difficult to count number of storms. It does not spark joy. If you don't actively have a hive on the way, you know you're pretty much at their mercy. Now, if they make a big mistake and go too far forward into Banelings or get caught without Storm or try to use too many... A lot of Protoss players have not adapted to the new Storm. They're still using it like the old one, which is more of a burst damage potential. But Showtime clearly demonstrating how Storm is now the most dangerous force field. It does devastating damage if you stand in it, but the threat of it controls the pace of the fight. And unlike force field, units do not automatically path around it. That also includes your own, but Protoss units have a tendency, almost to a unit, to have more HP than their Zerg counterparts. So while an Archon can survive several storms, Banelings, or Zerglings, or even Hydras, technically Lurkers can survive more than one. But the point being, Showtime knows what he has. And he did in game 1, he was just too slow to use it. What a match. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with the hands today. Maybe it's Reynor, alright? We're all a little Italian on this day. That's my excuse. Old Republic. Game number 3, all tied up. A clear trend in how the games go. Either Reynor is able to sow enough chaos to harvest a victory, or Showtime is able to stave it off and hold for long enough to walk across with the army that just can't be beat. Is that a wall? I want to say no. But, and that's not a pervert pillar either. That's just some fancy, this looks straight out of World of Warcraft, these fancy pylons. Okay, well, that answers my question. Thank you. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Could you not? Ooh. It's your job. I know. Well, the Overlord, somehow, quite a nimble navigator over here. Somehow the Overlord is gonna dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. Oh, it's so close. Come back. And he's coming back around the Stalker. There and back again. An Overlord story. Ooh. Oh, it's close. It's gonna be close. The Stalker is not on point here. And I think he made it. Oh. What a save! The most intense. He managed to just barely dodge out of range every time, predicting exactly when Showtime would pull back with the Stalker, and survives long enough to look at the desiccated corpse of what looks is some sort of alternative universe Ultralisk under it. But you know what? He survived to look at anything at all. So, if you survive to smash that like button, you can look at yourself and say, I deserve this. Beautiful segue into an Oracle. Sliding across the mount. Probably a little spiteful about that, Overlord. Alright. The Adept in an awkward position. The Zerglings get a nice pick off on it. The second Adept is much more tucked into those minerals, but the Zerglings just gonna start working on the the pylon. Is it enough? It's gonna be close. And then 2 more Zerglings come in and make it significantly less close. But I think they would have had it. The Oracle has to come back. Is this an Archon drop? Find yourself someone who loves you like Showtime loves Archons. And Archons love each other. It's love all the way down, I guess. Templar Archives on the way. So not even a DT Archon drop. Straight up Templar Archon drop, which means he's not dilly-dallying with the idea that Dark Templar are going to be the answer, but instead straight to the High Templar Archons, which, so DTs at 125, 125 are much more expensive in Mineral Archon than the 5150 of the High Templar. So, after a happy merging till death do them part, behind it, a Forge on the way, and Charge. Charge, Showtime. Sorry. I'm not here to backseat. I'm here to front seat, loudly. Working on the 4th base, but the base itself is maybe a bit too large a target to reliably get damage on, and the entire point of the Archon drop is to force out roaches. And, oh wow, okay. Slips into the mineral line. The Queens trying to deal with the War Prism, and so far...
Hey, this is restricted lair space! You can't be in here! You tell him, Brenda. Oh, shut up, Lucia.
Sorry. Well, Showtime just acknowledges that Zerg air control will be successful in cornering the War Prism. Wow. That's such a difference between Showtime and Hero and many other Protoss. He doesn't try to fly out. He probably could have gotten out. It would have just been some hull damage on the Prism. Like, he would have been probably in the yellow or maybe even the orange if he tried to slip by. But he's just like, no, I'll just recall. Because probably he's not going to need recall in... might have been better to... It's Singapore, so... Might have been ready to lose the Prism. Showtime is Tobias. And, okay. Debating whether losing the Prism was worth it. And then maybe the host of the game lagging, as they're both agreeing it feels like playing on the Singapore server, which is almost none of these players would prefer in any scenario from any region. So... I do believe Reynor is currently in Korea. So, Reynor is playing from Korea, part of the RSL tournament, and just generally Korean-based tournaments recently. So, they probably are playing on NA, which is usually what tournaments do to split the difference. It's not fun to talk about, because there's nothing we can really do about it. There are the physical requirements between the servers, but sometimes when you're trying to... Some tournaments will switch off the servers. Like, we'll play one on Korea, we'll play one on Europe. But I think most, and I think it's better, to play on a relatively neutral server where both sides have a similar amount. Usually, Europe and Korea have 80 to 120 ping to NA, which is not great, but it's also not terrible. And it's pretty consistent. So that is why there might be some issues here. In this particular scenario, and sometimes you might see some questionable decisions from players. Though many of them, like, it's part of the game at this stage. It's a big part of playing professional at this stage of StarCraft 2. So, Ultralisk Cavern on the way. Greater Spire is in production. You know, he's just getting everything. All right? He's going for the Buddhist Zerg. Give me one with everything. So, yep. Adrenal glands, +2 melee, +1 carapace, ultra cavern, more yada yada yada. What is he missing? Lurker Den, I guess, but he's got 88 drones, 83. We've had pretty much no rush. Probably feeling out that Singapore ping, but Showtime with 6 immortals, just a couple Archons, though plenty of energy. He's got his fleet beacon on the way back at home. But the fact that Corruptors are already in production. Meanwhile, charge lots to the north. I don't know why I stopped talking there, but I felt like something even more dramatic might happen because of these armies being so close together. I was kind of preparing the commentary for that, but I'm so it's Hero's fault. All right, Hero would have gone 3 times over now. Whereas Showtime pulled back again after getting some damage done with the charge slots, looking for a better position. Eating some banelings with the zealots. A cost-efficient trade, especially if you don't even lose the zealot. Zergling counter. Mothership on the way. A single brood lord. The lord of the brood. One brood lord. One of the saddest things. Meanwhile, the storms. But the Templar, the banelings close the distance. And take out the rest of the Templar. No more Archon merges, though some charge lots will get in. And they will spot the Greater Spire. 62 Zerglings on the way, and then Reynor's like, oh yeah, I should build some more broods. More broodlords in production. We got chitinous plating on the way for Ultralisk. Remember, he pretty much got the entire spread of Hive Tech. Barring no expense. As he has the income, though not a huge lead, as Showtime has pretty comfortably expanded across the southern edge of the map. Very far away from where... Oh, Immortals down the center, all stacked up. The Banelings just rolling through. Move command to maximize the potential. And both armies dwindling dramatically as Bartholomew, or Davy for short. The single Broodlord makes the difference. I think without the Broodlord, the Immortals would have beaten the last few roaches. And now... Bart's boys. No, we're not doing that. But 3 more Broodlords on the way. And Blink is not done, so even Warping and Stalkers might not be a direct answer to this. A single Tempest, only 1 Stargate right now for Showtime. He has something going for that Mass Tempest late game, as the Broodlords slowly but surely come flying in, kind of gliding their way across. The most dramatic carpet in the game. And since their fix in the recent patch, where they more reliably throw out all of their broodlings at maximum range as opposed to moving even closer or struggling to actually land them, it does feel much more microable. But they still have those main weaknesses. But there's a Mothership over the top. There's literally no anti-air. Eventually this Tempest will deal with it all. There's a single Storm Archon merge. Overseers over the top means that cloaking not going to be the ideal choice, but 22 probes dead. Ultras just cleaving through the third base. Charge slots have taken... Not again. Not again. It's not again. Reynor's at 200 supply. Showtime's at 100. We kind of... Yeah, not again. Reynor this time just wipes him out of the game, making it look more one-sided than a Mobius strip. And not sure exactly where it went wrong, but it certainly didn't go right for Showtime. As Reynor, the casual Hive Tech menagerie, just drowned Showtime and Zerg and sends us to game number 4. Maybe he should have lost the War Prism. It feels like Showtime getting more careful as the series goes on. After that game 1, I can't blame him too much for being very aware of potentially losing bases, but at some stage you just gotta go, all right? At some stage you have to force the Zerg into a fight so that way they can't force you into 2 or 3 of them on your side. At least that seems to be the most common wisdom. We'll see if there's an adjustment going into Ruby Rock, or if my standards are skewed by certain other Protoss styles. There's that early probe scout. But Reynor has not been going for the quick hatch. Not trying to extract or trick out early drones, but instead the third. It's mostly been paying off for him. I don't love it. Personally. As opposed to as looking at professionals, but personally as a Zerg. I don't hate it, but it's kind of like... it's kind of like one of your socks. There's a lot of sock-related commentary lately. Oh, what's up with that? But one of your socks being like one size a little bit smaller, it doesn't really fit in your shoe very well. Or maybe you put it on wrong, but now you got your shoes like, it's not a situation where you can adjust it easily. Yeah. So now you just kind of got to deal with that. And maybe it'll adjust itself eventually, maybe not. Or maybe you'll step on it wrong, it'll get worse. Anyways, that's what taking the third base instead of the natural feels like. It's not life-changing, but it's not fun. There's a lot of different philosophies and thought processes about how to actually hold it and make sure you're not too far behind, or dealing with adepts and oracles. Thing is, some Protoss players will just send it with the adepts. And Showtime is one of them. We saw that pretty much every game. He sends the first 2 adepts, and he'll just sacrifice them. So you have to respect it, which is almost defending his third base aggressively again. Now here's the thing. If you build enough Zerglings to deal with the adepts before they get there, he's already won. You're like, well, why don't you just build like 12 lings and easily deal with the adepts? 12 lings, every couple lings you build is one less drone. So, even if you build enough lings to stop him from killing drones, oh my, it would just keep going. Going through a tropical lag storm here. What a day. So they both, you know what? Topsy-turvy, but it's better, it's better. So they're clearly playing on NA server to try to balance it out. But even the servers in central US aren't something I'd want to well, that's usually where I am, but nobody was ever excited to be doing anything related to Ohio, all right? Let's be honest here. Not even the players from Italy, Germany, and Korea. Somehow it's still Ohio's fault. I'm on board with this. They deserve it. Sorry. I don't know. If those Ohioans could read, they'd leave very angry comments now. Oracle finds a kill, finds more knitting needles. Stargate, I can't get over how much I love this. Like I wouldn't want every map like this, but the contrast in the main base, just, there's something about it. It's so satisfying. I don't know. Maybe you know what? I'm not apologizing for this. I'm not hedging. It looks great. It's kind of odd that the rest is just like normal space station. We always got to have 1 or 2 of the generic space station maps. That's a staple of StarCraft 2 history. Now, there were times when we had like 3/4 of the map pool as generic looking space station maps, and that was a bit much. I feel like we definitely need a map. Unfortunately, the new map pool with 9 new maps, not a single one with like the crazy underwater like low gravity physics. It's like a slider or something. It isn't an on or off. You can choose the amount of gravity that applies to the physics of death animations and stuff, which the players certainly have turned off. But like Abyssal Reef is your example of the underwater map. I've seen some space maps, again, unfortunately none of these, that have low gravity instead of like reverse gravity, like underwater. And they look really cool. It's supposed to be like based on the moon, rather. Kind of stuff. One I think was called Earthrise that I really liked. And you can play them now, but I mean, I think that's underutilized in the fancy graphical effects that are just for us. If you like to watch. You guys like to watch, right? You like to watch? Are you hyped? Do you subscribe to the idea that you like to... Okay. Laying it on a little bit thick, but that's how your mother likes it. Anyways, 2 drones dead. to the Shady Bunch. Make that 5. Wow, that's escalating quickly. Great target fire out of Showtime to really maximize the damage. Ends up getting 20 Zerglings as well. The Oracles. Reynor's only had 55 drones. Building a few more. But the fact he has to build any more drones right now, as Showtime is building up Archons, charge lots, and +1. This is... It's not a fun time for the Zerg. He is kind of locked into the Hydras this time around as well. Showtime, adding on more gates. He's got charge. It seems like he's skipping Storm. So there is an inflection point where if they have too many Hydras and Langs, it doesn't matter how many Archons you have. They can just knock them down. As the Hydras outrange him and the Zerglings can zone him out. But there's the Storm on the way. Showtime acknowledging that fact, it seems. The 4th base is about to complete for Reynor, but again, not particularly quick. The fact he's just getting a 4th, I think, is giving up.
And we're walking. You call this walking, Brenda? I'm doing my best.
And, bringing the Queens for some support, so clearly Reynor is all sorts of in now. The Hydras, the Overlords, slowly gonna be dropping some creep on the other side eventually if they're able to get there. Triggers another stasis. Archon pulls back to the shield battery, takes as many sips as possible. The Queen's there to add some extra DPS. He doesn't have any Zerglings in front to draw out the charges. And slowly but surely, the creep is coming in from the Overlords. The Queen's pulling back. The slow creep tumor push. No, wait. The Queen's in a precarious position, and feedback could be devastating. Or just slicing their faces off could also be devastating. There's Storm on the Hydras. Archons bashing forward. The power is absolutely overwhelming. And this may be over before it really started. The damage done early by Showtime was devastating. And it may not have seemed like a lot, but losing 8 drones and then half a dozen more later, and Reynor never able to get a worker lead against a Protoss who's going for this sort of stiff arm bully army. One that's more focused on brute force than trying to tech up to some fancy Tempest or a Mothership. Showtime knew what he had, and Reynor played right into his hand right now. It's not over. But again, we're in that scenario where Reynor is... Oh... The stasis. Where Reynor is really hoping that Showtime makes a mistake. Or, I guess you could also consider it a mistake, so it'd fall under the same category, but it's worth mentioning differently. Or he just waits too long, and Reynor's able to get some sort of tech switch. In this case, it looks like he's angling towards Mutas. The Mutalisks are quite a risk, but we've already seen what happens if he continues down the Hydraling Bank trajectory. He just simply will not succeed. It's gonna be a dozen Mutas or so, but there's already Archon. Like, he doesn't have Blink, but the Mutas, a strong glance from a couple Archons, and those Mutas will just implode. So they have to be used to counterattack. There's already dozens of well, not a dozen cannons, but we're getting there. More cannons coming online. The Stargate is still technically powered in the main base, so, and that's usually the big sticking point of Mutas, is unless you're able to get into their main before they realize the Mutas exist, well, they can start pumping out Phoenixes, and it doesn't take too many to reach a critical mass. He spots it. Phoenix begins, and here we go. Both Oracles knocked out of the sky. Small victory, but an important one to start things off. Stalkers warped into the main base, and Archon or 2 pulls back, and all it took was 5 seconds of warning, and it's already enough for Showtime to zone out the Mutas quite effectively. He's just going mass Muta. This is his attempt to catch the army off guard, and there's no fast... Oh, the stasis. Demour the wall. The defense is impregnable. The army unstoppable. The patience unbreakable. And then the mutas fly into the natural. There's no cannons and no units. And he's going to kill a bunch of probes. Whoa. Well, this is absolutely the best he was going to get. But the charge lots will do just as much damage. The Hydra's eviscerated on the field. 9 workers apiece, going for the cannons. No blink, but he doesn't really need it. Showtime sends an army across the field. And what is there to deal with it? Well, the mutas can combine with the ground army. There's only a few Archons with this. Trying to intercept maybe the High Templar, as Storm's unlikely to be as effective against the mutas with that reduced DPS despite the longer duration. Have to be clear, it is more damage overall, but it is spread out over a longer amount of time. So that means the mutas can just, you know, fly away, assuming they have that option. The charge lots kill off the 4th base. Showtime still has 4. Reynor is desperately leaning into the mutas. He's got 23 and counting. He's all in on the most fragile unit Zerg can build, especially compared to the cost. He's trying to drag this into another base trade. And Showtime is, well, even a couple seconds will clear out a mineral line. And there's not enough Phoenixes, and they don't have range to really cut into the muta count reliably. So Reynor is still finding something resembling success with the Mutalisk. Though, again, Showtime splits off a cinematic of charge lots, slices through another hatchery. And the mutas are still a dangerous flock, but there's nothing, he doesn't have any units to stop this. He's base trading with the Hydraling, but oh, so close to stopping Blink and +3. But there's nothing to stop the Protoss. This army is completely uncontested. Meanwhile, the mutas are very much contested by the Archons. The Hydras and Lings have made their way through the 3rd base, but there was barely anything there to defend. And the mutas are going to try to come back, but what is there left to come back to? 5 more mutas in production. 30 in total. That's a lot of mutas. I said providing very important commentary that you come here for. That's a lot of mutas right there. You can tell by the way it is. Isn't that neat? Oh, the storms, but he actually managed to prevent magic boxing to minimize the damage, and the mutas will clean up the army. But wait, there's more. Another army coming across, this time with even more Archons. And, I mean, that was the absolute best case scenario. There's gonna be some Archons back at home to defend. And Reynor's running out of bases to trade. But the mutas, they do regenerate quite quickly. The storms, he splits. Great split, but again, the cannons adding some damage. The stalkers, the Archon, it's just he's whittling it down too much. He may survive, but again, at what cost? There's Phoenixes still. Feel like I've been casting a death animation for the last, like, 8 minutes, but Reynor refuses, absolutely bluntly refuses to tap it out until the mutas are eventually caught, or he runs out of buildings, and it may be the second one. He actually only has 3 buildings left. He's building 2 hatcheries, but he only has, in fact, he was about to be revealed. So, how poetic. The Charizard's gonna find another base, but the 7 Archons, their power is just too much. Not a whelming, but indeed an overwhelming amount. Might be able to pick off a Phoenix, but the Blink Stalkers, the charge lots will get, and he doesn't cancel. There's 6 drones left. Somehow Showtime, a almost an infuriating level of patience. I mean, you have to... It was unclear up until the very end whether he was being too careful. But Reynor still, somehow, almost makes it... The fact that the game ended at 88 to 46 supply, when Showtime had a 50 supply lead with a maxed out Protoss army pretty much. But Mutas just cannot survive a direct confrontation. And there was nothing else that could. Eventually, it was too much. And that brings us to game number 5. These two so evenly matched in such different ways. And Reynor, the almost reckless and relentless aggression. Showtime with the relentless defense. He just keeps coming home, and as long as there's anything left to come back to. And now we see, despite the drama in game 1, Showtime is able to hold it together, mentally and physically, and bring us to game number 5. 2 games where effectively players were revealed. Well, it all ends on 10,000 feet. Probe blocks the base. We're gonna play it out yet again. We'll see if anybody switches up their style dramatically. Reynor's still playing kind of a... Well, every game has been Hydra Ling with some extra flavor. Whether it's the lurkers or into a quick hive, but the Hydra Ling is how you deal with that mid-game army composition out of Protoss. And then, ideally, you either win with that composition or you grind out enough of a lead to overwhelm them at hive. If you're stuck on lair tech for too long, you better be ahead economically or have something up your sleeve. And if you don't, then time is limited. We've seen that in 2 games thus far, as Showtime just eventually becomes too big to fail. The only limiting factor is sometimes too big to move quickly across the map. An interesting strategic series as well. I mean, some of it probably the paying factoring in, but how Showtime is so true to his style of Demawa. The personality of Protoss players really comes through. And Zerg. Like Reynor with his occasionally begrudging. Like, we saw him win a game effectively with 1 to 3 Broodlords. Because he's like, I know I need Broodlords, but... okay, fine, Mom. I'll eat my Broodlords. Kind of vibes. Like, you can't just beat 12 Archons with Zerglings. Though he's tried before. As we saw trying to beat 12 Archons with Mutas. And kind of, but not really. Adepts completes the shape. Again, you can see. So look at the worker count. 24 to 32. This is what I was talking about. With the Adepts, you don't need to kill drones to have killed drones. To keep that worker lead so dramatically. Reynor now getting some of the injects that will allow him to catch up economically. But that just means the early economic lead pretty solidly goes to the Protoss if they're able to manipulate the drone count like that. Of course, there's enough Zerglings now to potentially threaten a third base. Though with an Oracle overhead, that's optimistic at best. Gonna target down a couple more. No gases 3 and 4 yet for Showtime. Alright, well. Making that less true as time goes on. But he's adding a third Oracle back in. The Triumvirate. Which has been repopularized lately. Oracles are just so good at everything. Like, they're great at staring down overlords and making them uncomfortable so the stalkers can shoot at them. Between the scouting, the damage, the utility, like, it's almost never bad to have more oracles. The only question is whether making those oracles is keeping you from getting something even more important. But unlike adepts, sorry adepts, but having oracles, well, they are the most evergreen unit in the Protoss army. And since Protoss are plants, that's quite a compliment. Just watch the campaign. Carrick says it. All right. Well, he implies it. The light of the sun, or solarite, nourishes our people. You know who else is nourished by the sun? Plants. I rest my cases. Meanwhile, though, the Zerglings managed to get 5 probes, even while the adepts are dripping back at home. So Showtime dropping the ball a bit on the Oracle adept pressure as he lost so much at home that it was almost immediately counteracted. It's just going to be blink and +1, the most standard fare. But yeah, the Oracles, pretty much no point of the game do you want to be left without Oracles. Alright, between Revelation, Stasis, Home Defense, alright, I never leave home without my personalized concealed carry Oracle, alright? Sometimes two, if I'm feeling spry that day. But just the unit, it's always there. In the late game, it's your detection. In the early game, it's everything. And in the mid game, it's really whatever you want. The threat of oracles keeps a lot of Zerg attacks at bay before they can even start. At least until Hydralisk, or if they do happen to go Spire. You're kind of forced to commit to a Queen all-in if you want to get damage done before Hydras or Spire. And that is all sorts of in, and that might not be where you want to go. The Treacle's still finding some more damage. Endlessly annoying. Showtime taking the 4th base down the center. Storm is in production as well. Hydra Dun's completed. +1 ranged attack is the first. Well, he's already got the melee, but +1 ranged attack tells a story in and of itself as the Hydras join the production tab. Robotics facility for Showtime. And we've danced around and pranced with the Stalkers and Oracles, but now the economies are scaling up. The production is getting to a critical level, and both players are going to be sprinting towards 200 supply very quickly, and somewhat literally with charge now in production. +1 ground weapons for the Protoss. Now completed, not starting anything else yet. Showtime just happy to sit back and build up the wall. 5 more drones dead. Oh, wow. He comes and he's like, wait a second. No spore? It's free real estate. Lights up the Oracle. Burns away 6 more drones. That Oracle has 12 kills. And I'm pretty sure all of them are drones. He's killed 20 drones so far. Which is quite infuriating and potentially debilitating for the Zerg. But Reynor, most of the damage was done after he already had his hatcheries and his economy intact. So it will be Reynor with 200 supply and plenty of production. He is not making the mistake. I feel like he just mentally kind of forced himself to switch gears right there. Like, instead of just going for it, he built the infestation pit. He built another round of drones. And realized, you know what? Maybe we don't commit outright, but instead, we're going to go for the drop. Something to keep the pressure on. No lurker den started yet. I feel like that's a mistake, but a fleet beacon is on the way on the other side. But Well, the Dropper Lords may actually be scouted by the Charge Lots. He catches a glimpse of it. That's absolutely huge. But Showtime is still in a awkward position when it comes to his supply. The drops are actually pulling all the way back. A Spire is on the way. Is he just gonna rush Brood Lords and skip the Lurker phase entirely? It's not unlikely at this stage. A War Prism along the left side, and the Dropper Lords are left back at home. Again, Reynor applying some of Showtime's logic of, it's better to have my army intact than it is to try to trade it away in a much less guaranteed scenario. Scouting Immortal. Realize it, reins it in. The Hydras. He spots the hive nearly complete. And we dance back and forth 10 minutes with only a few skirmishes. Mostly the Oracle's bullying things, and that's just hive tech. Ultra Cavern, Greater Spire, Adrenal Glands, Mothership. Welcome to the late game. The 10-minute mark is passed, and now we've unlocked the late game units, and the circle closes. And still, in our battle royale... No. Whole bunch of Zerglings in the bottom left corner. The expansion's getting closer and closer together. The upgrades more and more dangerous. The army composition, almost nothing left unchecked so far. A bunch of Banelings on the ground, but he's not going to waste them. Tempest on the way. Interesting that Showtime has preferred to go for a single Stargate and just rush a Mothership than the sort of mass Tempest style. He's not mining through the 5 mineral patch wall. The quick... Anyways, each of these has 5 minerals, which means you can mine in a single trip. The reason there are so many is so mules can't mine them instantly instead. But the Hydras, Lings, and Banes coming through. Some army down the center. Actually gets a storm. More storms to the north. The 5th base for Showtime. He needs to mine this now. Like, Mothership is out. Hydras, Lings, and Banes, but the Stasis going to keep some of it at bay. There's a second Stasis in position. It's going to drag out some of the Banes. Meanwhile, still fighting the army. The Archons in an awkward position. Banelings rolling through. Showtime looking the other way. 14 probes dead. Going to consolidate his forces at the 3 o'clock. We'll call it 5. Meanwhile, those Zerglings getting the wraparound in the Mothership a little bit late. Still hasn't mined through the mineral wall. Showtime bleeding out quickly here, down to 130 supply. The Hydra's still getting plenty of damage done. Oracle comes forward. He has to recall onto the base. And that's not enough units. Just a handful of Stalkers. Mr. Zergachev, tear down this wall. Reynor brings Showtime down to 125 supply. He got a bunch of probes with it. He didn't kill a single base, but he wiped out 8 Archons, 8 High Templar before they could ever become Archons. All of the Oracles in a comprehensive disaster across the board. Showtime lost parts of his army, his infrastructure, and his economy. Meanwhile, Reynor lost nothing but whatever units he was throwing. Hydras, Lings, and Banes. Units he wanted to throw away. Now he's replaced them with mass Ultralisk, which is good. It runs the risk of being hard countered by the Immortals. But there aren't too many Immortals on the field, and there's only 2 in production. He's only got 2 and about to double the count, but the Ultra's chewing through, and the Corruptors have joined the fray. But Showtime, getting mauled in the first fight, is going to struggle to hold in the second. Banelings rolling in, and Showtime, no reaction on the probes. He's trying to manage the fight to the north. And Reynor is... There are too many of them. We cannot get out. They are coming. Again, Showtime survives. But we have to ask ourselves that question. Have you liked and subscribed? And at what cost? 22 probes dead. What an anticlimactic end. A tough... I mean, Reynor executed it perfectly. But it still feels like Showtime just kind of crumbled. Maybe the wall held up by a more fragile foundation than we expected, but this time around, Reynor held himself back. He didn't go for the Hydraling Bane timing. He said, you know, I could actually do... He's not attacking me. I can go to Hive Tech. I can get Ultras. I can get Corruptors. I don't have to throw my army away. And Showtime was unable to hold pretty much any side of the fight. And Reynor, in the most one-sided game of the series, takes it all. 3-2. And after that game won, a bit of a heartbreaker for Showtime, I think, as that first game easily could have been his if just a split second in many different scenarios. But no. At the end of the day, those seconds don't count. Only the amount of G's. And this time around, Reynor comes out ahead 3-2. So hopefully you enjoyed as much as I did, despite the kind of unceremonious end. But thank you for watching. If you got the means and motivation, it'd be awesome to check out Patreon or YouTube membership. But I hear liking and subscribing and hyping is still free, at least for now. And thank you to our Mule Tier patrons for bringing in the extra minerals. Big Jig, Devendor, Kate, Mario, Soup, glad you still enjoy. To everyone, make sure to check out this video that Jimmy picked out just for you. And totally the algorithm didn't. And Jimmy didn't. And otherwise, I'll see you next time. Good luck. Have fun. Stay chill.